You're still watching The Lead with myself, Mfundo Mabalane. Now, the South African Local Government Association is concerned that there simply is not enough time to form coalitions in 66 hung municipalities. Political parties have until next week Tuesday, failing which the provincial government would have to step in. Now, for more on this is the South African Local Government Association's Lance Joel. Lance, thank you very much for your time. Now, we understand that you've raised concern on the short period for councils to actually hold their first sittings. But this short period, is it not meant to perhaps guard against leaving a municipality without political oversight for a very long time?
Well, good afternoon, and also to the viewers. Well, certainly a good point that you are making, that I think core to having a short space in between the declaration of the elections and the convening of the first meeting is to exactly avoid a vacuum of political oversight over the administration, but also political leadership. And that still remains a relevant principle to apply. However, we have seen that this election and the outcomes of this election has resulted in an increased number of hung councils. And you would have seen in many of these hung councils, the negotiations are led by political parties through their national leadership, and it requires them to interact with a number of parties across the different provinces because of the high number of municipalities. So it is creating a bit of a difficulty from where we are sitting and where we are seeing things, because meetings are postponed and left to the last 2 days of that 14-day period. And we can only hope that things would fall into place come Monday and Tuesday. If not, we are going to sit with a difficulty, as you have correctly stated in your introductory statement. So it's a bit of a concern, though.
And then beyond, speaking of concern, what about today's developments? We know that the eNCA's mayor-elect actually went to court to force the acting MM to hold the first sitting. We're not sure if that will happen. We've seen in Tshwane what's happening. At the very least with Tshwane, all they're doing is just saying they're going to take their time. But we're seeing several council meetings collapse, like in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, which took place yesterday. Your take on all that we're seeing now?
Well, it's part of the concern that we have, is that there's a short space of time to convene that council meeting, and just this week alone, it shows us that there are risks attached to hoping that within that 14-day there would be a first council meeting. Indeed, we have witnessed yesterday in the Nelson Mandela Metro, and for a legitimate reason, we must state that the meeting could not proceed. It would not have been a regular meeting because there are irregularities surrounding that. We are concerned that despite the fact that we have put in a lot of effort to workshop particularly our municipal managers and senior managers in preparation for this first council meeting, that there seems to be some challenges that we experience, but generally a good response. We are just hoping that within the 14 days, which expires on Tuesday, we would see the convening of all councils and indeed have the leadership collective elected during that first sitting.
Now, speaking of workshopping or training, you're saying you guys trained municipal officials. But then in terms of the councils, I don't know if you watched the proceedings yesterday. I was actually talking to a political analyst shortly. I don't know if you watched the proceedings yesterday in Nelson Mandela Bay. I listened to one council member who stood up and went on to state, after the acting MM stated that he cannot proceed with the sitting, he stood up and then he said, we are in fact the legislative body that will now make decisions at this point. He sits down. Another council member stands up and says, no, we have not even been sworn in. We are not a council as we are. And for me, that raised a bit of a concern just listening to the gentleman, that there clearly needs to be education about this sphere of government, where they need to be educated on the process and actually at what point they start to be councillors. The very simple aspect of just processes of local government, we saw yesterday that there's no appreciation of those. So as SALGA, it's your competency. Are you going to push for that workshopping or training?
Well, certainly your own assessment is correct. I was in fact in that meeting when it took place. And if we have to take our cue from what happened yesterday, there is an uphill battle for SALGA to capacitate its councillors. Well, essentially leading up to the elections, core to the proceedings that would unfold post the elections are your senior managers. So we focused on the senior manager because the councillors were outgoing. And so what we saw yesterday is that even where we had spent quite a bit of time in the last term of office to build the capacity of councillors, it really showed us yesterday that there is a lot more that needs to be done.
Yeah.
We have a program that we are going to roll out over the next 3 months. And I think indications that came out yesterday says to us, well, that will not suffice. We probably need a more sustained program that almost says, let's on an annual basis refresh councillors around the roles and responsibilities, but more so what the legislation prescribes must be done. Because yesterday, everyone spoke very confidently about the law, but did so incorrectly, stating incorrect references to the law. And that is concerning.
They were very emphatic, and not necessarily to criticize, just across the board. We understand they're eager to serve. They wanted to be sworn in and for that first sitting to get underway. We understand. And these people are respectfully elected by their various communities. But really, when they spoke emphatically and we were sitting there knowing that this is incorrect, you are not a legislative body, I really stood up and just watched my television screen and said there clearly is a problem here. And then today, listening to the Deputy President, Didi Mabuza, speaking in Parliament, he went on to concede that yes, there is an issue of leadership within municipalities, and it's at the heart of the dysfunction. And beyond that, he went on to reveal that at least 60% of councillors are not literate in terms of being able to use a computer. So, I mean, that's concerning.
Well, I think the concerns are indeed correct. We have to use the first 6 months to really anchor this term of office. If we miss it in the first 6 months, as SALGA, through the capacity building initiatives we are going to roll out, it's going to be an uphill battle. So the start would be to anchor, accepting, yes, that people are new to local government. These are new councillors. There's been a high turnover, and we must take cognizance of that reality. The second thing is that we don't really have a sense at this stage of what type of people from a qualification, skills, experience have entered local government. When we embark on the training program, we will certainly, through our assessment, where we will require individual councillors to give us information linked to their skills, experience, and so forth, it will give us a better sense of what we are going to deal with. And perhaps post the induction program, we will come up with a more sustainable training program to ensure that there's an ongoing capacitation of our councillors to enable them to play their roles respectively.
Sure. Well, good luck with the job. All we want is just councillors that can serve the various communities. Hopefully it will go well. That's South African Local Government Association's Lance Joel talking to us on the councils that are currently all expected to have their first sittings come next week. That's the 23rd.